Look around you. Look at the gas station where you fill your car. Look at the hospital where you were born. Look at the school where you learned to read. Look at the bank card in your wallet. You think these are separate things, don't you? Different industries, different worlds. You're wrong. They're all gears of a single machine. And one of the architects of this system, his name, John Davidson Rockefeller. History books call him the oil baron. They call him the first billionaire. They call him the symbol of the Gilded Age. But that's a misconception. Oil was just the fuel. Money was just a tool. His true masterpiece wasn't Standard Oil. His true masterpiece, the system. That system, today the hospital where you were born operates on the model he established. The school you attend teaches the curriculum he financed. The medicine you take is the product of the medical philosophy he created. The dollar you use comes from the central bank his father-in-law designed. And the most unsettling part, the system is so perfectly built that most of us can't even imagine a world outside of it. 1839, upstate New York. Little John comes into the world. His father is a complete con artist. William Big Bill. Rockefeller travels from village to village selling bottled cancer cures. Married to 2 women, a master swindler. He says this about his sons. I cheat my boys every chance I get. That's how they'll learn life. But John inherited not his father's chaos, but his mother's discipline. At 16, he started working as an assistant bookkeeper at a small trading firm in Cleveland, a boring job for most young people. For Rockefeller, it was a moment of enlightenment. He loved that little ledger, those numbers. And in that ledger, he noticed something very important. The vast majority of people are wasteful. The vast majority of businesses are inefficient. And he understood. If you eliminate waste, you control the price. If you control the price, you control the market. This wasn't ordinary greed. For Rockefeller, waste was a sin. Disorder was evil. He believed he had a divine gift for making money and a divine mandate to bring order to chaos. 1870. Standard Oil Company was incorporated. The name itself was a stroke of genius. In those days, kerosene lamps were exploding, burning, and killing people in their homes. The word standard meant trust. It meant quality. It meant safety. But to impose that standard, he first had to destroy the competition. Rockefeller has a famous saying, competition is a sin. And he didn't leave it at words. In 1872, he launched one of the most ruthless corporate operations in history. The Cleveland Massacre. There were 26 competing refineries in the city. Rockefeller wanted them all. But he didn't compete with them. He rigged the game. He went to the railroads and negotiated a massive discount. Standard Oil would receive special pricing because it shipped such high volumes. So far normal. But then he went one step further. Every time a competitor shipped a barrel of oil, the railroad company would pay Rockefeller a commission. Think about that. Your competitors are paying you to put them out of business. Then he went to his rivals' doors. He opened his books. He showed them. Look, I can sell below your cost of production. You have 2 choices. Either sell to me now and take Standard Oil stock, or get driven into bankruptcy and I'll buy you out at scrap metal prices. In less than 4 months, he swallowed 22 of the 26 refineries. By 1879, Standard Oil controlled 90% of America's oil refining capacity. It controlled the pipelines. It controlled the tanker cars. It controlled the barrel factories. This was an industrial concentration never seen before in history. The monopoly part is done. Now look at the real genius. In those days, the logic of oil refining was simple. Boil the crude oil, extract the kerosene, dump the rest in the river. That rest was about 40% of the barrel volume. Gasoline, tar, naphtha. Other refiners dumped these into the Cuyahoga River. The river would sometimes catch fire. Rockefeller refused to throw anything away. He hired chemists. He said, make something out of this sludge. And they did. From the sticky residue, roads were made to asphalt was born. From the wax, candles and coating materials were made, paraffin was born. A lubricant was produced for machines, motor oil was born. A medicinal jelly was found, Vaseline was born. And that explosive liquid called gasoline, it was tailor-made to power the internal combustion engine. Rockefeller turned garbage into gold. And thus he created the petrochemical industry. Now oil wasn't just for lamps. It was roads. It was medicine. It was industry. It was transportation. He accelerated civilization's dependence on petroleum, from the aspirin you take for a headache to the asphalt you drive over to get to the store. Everything is a product of his system. In the early 1900s, Rockefeller was the richest man in the world. His wealth was equivalent to approximately 2% of the entire U.S. economy. But he knew, to shape the system long-term, influence over finance was essential. The American banking system was chaotic. Panics were common. The Panic of 1907 nearly destroyed the economy. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, the Warburgs, they all wanted the same thing: a central bank, a structure that could bail out Wall Street, print money, and stabilize the system for the elites. But there was a problem. The American public hated central banks. They chose discretion. November 1910. A secret train left New Jersey. The blinds were drawn. The passengers used code names. Inside were Senator Nelson Aldrich, representatives of J.P. Morgan and Paul Warburg. Nelson Aldrich happened to be Rockefeller's father-in-law. His daughter Abby was married to John D. Rockefeller, Jr. They traveled to Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia, an exclusive club owned by the ultra-rich. For 10 days in complete secrecy, they drafted the legislation for the Federal Reserve. They designed a system that looked like a government agency but was actually owned by private banks. They avoided calling it a bank. They called it the Federal Reserve. In 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed. Monetary policy decisions were moved to a more centralized structure and handed over to a consortium of private banks. But Rockefeller's most ambitious project was neither oil nor money. The human body. In the late 19th century, medicine in America was diverse. There were doctors, yes, but there were also homeopaths. There were herbal healers. There were naturopaths. There were midwives. People healed themselves with natural methods. Rockefeller saw this as disorder and as competition. He had petrochemical byproducts coming out of his refineries. His chemist told him these could be turned into patentable drugs. But you can't patent an herb. You can't patent nature. To sell his petrochemical drugs, he needed to change the entire medical system. He used his philanthropy as a weapon. In 1910, the Rockefeller Foundation and the Carnegie Foundation funded a man named Abraham Flexner. His mission: to evaluate all medical schools across the country. Flexner visited 155 schools. His report was devastating. Any school that didn't focus on germ theory, surgery, and drug-based medicine was unscientific and should be closed. He recommended shutting down more than half the medical schools in the country, especially those teaching homeopathy and natural medicine, and then the trap snapped shut. Rockefeller and Carnegie channeled millions to schools that adopted the Flexner model. A school that dropped natural medicine and shifted to pharmaceutical training received money. Those that refused received nothing. Within a few years, herbal medicine schools went bankrupt. Natural healers were marginalized. The American Medical Association, AMA, funded by corporate money, began regulating who could be a doctor. Health became a monopoly. Medicine turned into healthcare, and healthcare turned into the business of prescribing patented drugs. Rockefeller didn't just invest in the pharmaceutical sector. His philanthropy accelerated the dominance of one medical model over others. Today, every time you take a pill, you're participating in the system he designed. Modern medicine has saved millions of lives, but understanding how the system was shaped is also important. To sustain a system this vast, you need a specific type of person. Not independent thinkers, not farmers who can live off their land. Workers, punctual, obedient workers who can follow instructions. In 1902, Rockefeller founded the General Education Board, GEB. He poured hundreds of millions of dollars into it. Rockefeller's chief advisor, Frederick T. Gates, wrote the board's manifesto. His words are chillingly candid. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. We shall not try to make these people, or any of their children, into philosophers or men of learning or of science. The task we set before ourselves is very simple. We will organize children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way. The goal was not to raise leaders. It was to raise a compliant workforce. The GEB funded schools across the country but dictated the curriculum. It imposed an education model based on the Prussian factory system. Bells to signal time, rows of desks, rote memorization, and respect for authority. They raised a generation that could live comfortably inside the cage, but never question the cage. But people didn't always yield with perfect docility. Rockefeller was a hated man, the symbol of greedy capitalism. In 1914, that hatred exploded in Colorado. Workers in the mines owned by Rockefeller's Colorado Fuel and Iron Company lived in company towns. They were paid in company scrip. They worked in dangerous conditions. They went on strike. The managers called in the National Guard and private detectives. On April 20th, 1914, militia forces opened fire on the workers' tent colony. They set the tents on fire. 2 women and 11 children were suffocated in a pit they had dug to escape the bullets. The Ludlow Massacre shocked the nation. Rockefeller was called a murderer. His son John D. Rockefeller Jr. understood. Brute force is no longer enough. A new way to control the narrative was needed. They hired Ivy Lee, a former journalist, the man known today as the father of public relations. Lee said, "Don't hide. Change the story." Rockefeller began handing out coins to children in public places. He posed for photos dancing with minors' wives. He publicized his charitable work, and he set up company unions. In place of real unions, worker councils run by the company, to give workers the illusion of power. This was the birth of modern corporate public relations. Rockefeller learned, you can control people more effectively with images and soft power than with machine guns. The killer was transformed into the benevolent grandfather, and the world bought it. John D. Rockefeller built the machine. His descendants globalized it. His grandson David Rockefeller was the CEO of Chase Manhattan Bank. Not just a banker, the ultimate globalist. The Rockefeller family knew very well that national borders were obstacles to capital. As a solution, they financed and led the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. Founded in 1921, it became one of the most influential foreign policy think tanks in the United States. In the last century, nearly every Secretary of State, CIA Director, and Treasury Secretary has been a member of this structure. David Rockefeller also founded the Trilateral Commission in 1973. Its goal? To integrate the economies of North America, Europe, and Japan. In his memoirs, he wrote, "Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States. If that's the charge, I stand guilty and I am proud of it." They didn't hide it. They were proud of it. They believed that a global system run by elites was the only way to prevent chaos, and they exported the Rockefeller model, industrial agriculture, Western medicine, central banking, to every corner of the globe, and here we are today. When you go to school, you're inside the system designed by his General Education Board. When you go to the doctor, you're inside the system shaped by his Flexner Report. When you fill up your car, you're paying the heirs of Standard Oil. When you use a dollar, you're using a currency managed by the Federal Reserve his father-in-law helped create. When you watch the news, you're watching narratives shaped by the PR industry his family pioneered. The genius of the system is this. It no longer needs a Rockefeller at its head. The machine runs itself. It rewards efficiency. It punishes independence. It centralizes power. It takes value from the many and concentrates it in the few. We call it modernity. Rockefeller called it order. But is it order, or is it a cage? A cage made of gold, steel, and oil, comfortable, efficient, and nearly impossible to leave. John D. Rockefeller died in 1937, just shy of his 98th birthday, believing he had done God's work. He donated $530 million, far more than any person in history had given up to that point. He cured diseases. He built universities. He constructed the industrial might of America. But he also destroyed the independence of the individual. He replaced the craftsman with the employee. He replaced the healer with the pharmaceutical industry. He replaced the citizen with the consumer. He created a world that is safer, healthier, and wealthier than ever before, but also a less free one. The real question isn't, was Rockefeller good or evil? That's too simple a question. The real question is, can we survive the machine he built? Can we reclaim our health, our education, and our money from the institutions designed to control us? Or will we continue to be gears in the engine of Standard? The man is gone. But the system remains. And the system doesn't like to be questioned. History holds the answers, if you have the courage to look. Don't forget to subscribe and follow this channel.